Hello, everyone. It is so good to be with you all today. My name is Natalie Buscemi, and I'm going to do a little kickoff of who will be presenting on this call about the Fiscal 26 Medium Duty and Heavy Duty Zero Emission Vehicle Grant Program. So I will go off first, and then I will pass it to my colleague Pratiksha. So my name, once again, Natalie Buscemi, Transportation Program Manager at the Maryland Energy Administration. I also am the Maryland Clean Cities and Communities Coalition Director. I will now pass it to Pratiksha to give a brief introduction to herself, and then we will get right into the presentation.
Hi everyone, my name is Pratiksha Ganeshan. I am a transportation energy specialist with the Maryland Energy Administration. I work quite a bit on the medium and heavy duty zero emission vehicle grant program, and I'm here to answer any questions. It's very nice to meet you all.
Awesome. Thank you, Pratiksha. So now we're going to get into what the agenda is going to be for the presentation today. So first, we're going to go over the program itself, just kind of few program description and basics. Then we're going to go into some program requirements and eligible projects. Then the evaluation criteria overview, and lastly, key grant features. There will also be some other things that we're going to be discussing today and showing you on the screen so you understand some of the metrics of how we calculate grant amounts and how we look at the different types of vehicle types that are included in this program. Okay, so first, program overview. So the program provides financial assistance for the purchase of qualified, newly manufactured, medium-duty or heavy-duty zero-emission fleet vehicles, as well as qualified zero-emission heavy equipment property, strictly for commercial or industrial use. Some key details. So this program has an application deadline of October 30th, 2025 at 3 p.m. Eligible applicants include local governments, nonprofit organizations, business and company fleets, airports, higher education institutions, and K-12 schools. Eligible vehicles are going to be Class 3 through 8 vehicles with a gross vehicle weight rating of more than 10,000 pounds. And lastly, this program is a statewide competitive application process. So now I'm going to get into what the new portal looks like for this program, and then also show you guys what the webpage for this program looks like, so you can see what is on there, what you need to look at and utilize before you want to even look at applying to this program. Okay, so this is the program webpage on the Maryland Energy Administration's main page itself. We have a few things on here for you to note. If interested, at the bottom of this page, we have fiscal 24 and 25 award lists, just so you can see the previous projects that we've awarded, the types of vehicles, just to get a sense of what is something that we have been really interested in the previous fiscal years for this program. Once again, it is open and accepting applications. We're very excited. It has a few things that I discussed in the slide previously: program purpose, eligibility. We'll get into the funding and how much this grant covers in terms of costs, the deadline, and then really important thing you want to look at is the funding opportunity announcement. This is something that we highly encourage all applicants look at before applying to make sure they're eligible and they're following all ways that they need to apply and include in the application itself. And then now I'm going to show you guys the new My MEA online application portal for this program. Okay, so this is the new My MEA portal. As you can see, we have many different programs on this portal, which is very exciting. And I'm going to go into the medium duty, heavy duty zero emission vehicle grant in this one. So this is what you're going to see when you go to this portal and hit this specific program. You're going to see we have the deadline up. We do have that it is a competitive program. And then we also include some specific things you'll want to look at before you even apply, what things are needed to apply, who and what is eligible, and then also just a little timeline on what the process is going to look like once you do apply. And one more thing to note is you'll see we have the program webpage up here as well, right here. Then we also have the funding opportunity announcement too. So there are links to those as well, so you can look at them before applying. Okay, moving on. Okay, so now we're going to get into some program requirements and eligible projects. So some of the requirements of this program are applicants that are local governments and entities that they must have at least 3 vehicles in their current fleet. The caveat to this is that, let's say a fleet has only 1 vehicle in their current fleet, but they buy 2 zero-emission vehicles. That would be considered an eligible project because at the end of the project, they will have 3 total vehicles in their fleet. Vehicles must be domiciled or operated in Maryland for at least 3 years. I will touch on what this means in further slides in regards to reporting. Purchase orders must be dated after the grant agreement effective date. Applicants have to be in good standing with the Maryland State Department of Assessments and Taxation. And then in terms of some ineligible projects or entities, state and federal agencies are not eligible for this grant program. Personal use vehicles are also not eligible for this grant program. And then neither are neighborhood electric vehicles. Low-speed vehicles as well are not eligible. And then parallel and series plug-in hybrids. And lastly, repowered vehicles. So vehicles also purchased for resale are not eligible. And then also vehicles that have already been funded or expected to be funded under the Volkswagen Trust Fund or other state programs are not eligible. And lastly, another thing to note is this grant does not provide funding for charging infrastructure. MEA does have 2 other programs that might suit your funding needs for these chargers. And you are highly encouraged to visit the website to find additional details about these opportunities. And we will also have a slide at the end with a QR code that will have all of MEA's programs. And if you want to learn more about those charger programs, you'll want to go to the transportation page on that webpage. Okay, so in terms of the evaluation criteria overview, so this kind of gets into the main things we look at when we are evaluating applications once they have been received and the deadline is closed. We've received all applications. So we prefer preference for projects that replace petroleum-powered vehicles. There is not a requirement for this, but we do have preference for projects that do so. Cost effectiveness is measured in dollar per metric ton of CO2 equivalent. And this, we look at the greenhouse gas abatement, and that is calculated using the type of vehicle and the vehicle miles traveled using the A-Fleet tool. So as I just showed, the My MEA portal, which is where you would apply for this program, has sections in here where you'll provide vehicle miles traveled annually for the vehicles in this grant. So we ask a lot of specific information during the application so we can calculate these types of calculations to give you a better estimate of what the grant amount is going to be and to see how many greenhouse gas emissions is reduced. And lastly, the dollar per metric ton of CO2 equivalent value uses the eligible grant amount and this greenhouse gas abatement as well. So one thing we'd like to look at is fleet commitment. Like I said, in the application, there will be multiple questions that ask about where do you plan to charge these vehicles? What is your current maintenance strategy? Are you going to be doing in-house maintenance or do a third party? The questions are really about what is your past, current, and future plans to get these vehicles and then also maybe get more vehicles. Very important to see that. And then preference for projects that benefit overburdened and low to moderate income communities. We will be using a new tool through the Maryland Department of the Environment. Their tool looks at communities that are in based on an address. So we will be able to do that with the address provided in the application for where these vehicles are going to be housed for a project. For area of interest 1, on-road, we do like to see if there are extra road safety features, specifically automatic emergency braking. advanced driver assistance systems, lane assist, underride guards, etc. They are favored. Not required, but favored. And then lastly, past MEA grant performance may also be considered, just so we can kind of see how grantees have previously worked with us in the past and what future performance could look like for them. Okay, so in terms of key grant features, this is where we're going to get into the dollar amounts and a little bit more into the costs that's covered in this grant. So grants will cover up to 75% of the incremental cost between the ZEV and the diesel or gasoline vehicle. And in the next slide or two, I will show what this visually means. So grants also are paid in arrears. The project completion deadline for these grants is 24 months from the grant agreement execution date. So grantees have 2 years to purchase their vehicles, get them in service, and submit for reimbursement to MEA. Partial awards also are possible depending on the demand and budget availability. In terms of funding caps, so there are 2 areas of interest, on-road and off-road. For on-road, the cap is up to $2.5 million per applicant. And then for off-road, it is up to $375,000 per applicant. And lastly, this is what I touched on a little bit earlier for 3 years, why the vehicles have to be domiciled and operate in Maryland for 3 years is because there are quarterly operation reports required for this program for 3 years post-delivery. So once the vehicles are in service and you've been reimbursed, you start doing those quarterly reports for a minimum of 3 years. And in these reports, we look at vehicle miles traveled, energy use. We collect data on the vehicles itself in terms of the VINs and stuff like that. And then lastly, before the vehicles are placed in service, we like to get quarterly progress updates as well, so we can see what the status of the vehicles are, how close they're being delivered, if there are any issues, vendor changes, or anything of that sort. Okay, so in terms of vehicle types, this is also in the funding opportunity announcement, but we wanted to include it here because we receive a good amount of questions sometimes on what is a single unit short haul truck or combination long haul truck. So we wanted to make this so you had a few good examples of what to look for when you're looking for these electric versions. So as we stated, it's class 3 through 8, so these all are in that category. And same thing with the weight, has to be more than 10,000 pounds. So you'll see that all these have 10,000 pounds or more. And then just to give a few shout out examples, the single unit short haul truck, we see a lot of different examples of box trucks being applied. We see refuse trucks. There are a few examples here, the Mack LR Electric, the Peterbilt 520. We also see transit buses. And then for a combination long haul truck, a good example is a sleeper cab. The Volvo VNL 860 is a good example we've seen. And then also just to note, the combination short haul truck and long haul truck is distinguished by how many miles it travels. So for the short haul truck, it's going to be 250 or less miles. And then for the long haul truck, it's going to be 250 or more miles. So that's just to give an example of what those vehicle types are that we fund. This is only for the on-road vehicles. For the off-road vehicles, some examples that we've seen are forklifts, excavators, and we haven't seen cranes yet, but cranes is an option. We have funding for that if there's a need for that, and tractors as well. We've funded as well. So just to give a few examples of on-road and off-road vehicles to get your mind thinking of what we have seen and what you could potentially get funding for if awarded. Okay, so here's what I was discussing earlier, seeing that visual aid of what incremental cost really means for this program. We get a lot of questions about this. So the grant covers 75% of the incremental cost for the purchase of the zero-emission vehicle in the off-road vehicle or on-road vehicle. So this is going to show the purchase price of the zero-emission vehicle minus the purchase price of the petroleum equivalent vehicle, which could be diesel or gasoline. That equals the incremental cost. So once you get that incremental cost, the difference, then you multiply by 0.75, and that will give you what the eligible grant amount is. It's an estimate, but it gets a pretty good close guess to what your grant amount could be. And this is also why we strongly encourage you to reach out to us beforehand to make sure the quotes you have are kind of making sense to you and that you can get a good sense of what would be getting yourself into if you did apply. And another requirement of this program that was not on the previous slide is we need to see a quote for the ZEV and for the diesel or gasoline equivalent. If that's not provided, we only have the ZEV quote, then we will use the A-Fleet tool to calculate what a good eligible grant amount would be. And that is a good segue. I will now pass it to Pratiksha. She will show you guys the A-Fleet tool and how we use it to estimate a good eligible grant amount for you all.
Thank you, Natalie. Okay. So the A-Fleet online tool is a web-based tool created by the Argonne National Laboratory for the U.S. Department of Energy's Clean Cities program. It stands for the Alternative Fuel Life Cycle, Environment, and Economic Transportation. The tool helps fleets, agencies, and policymakers estimate the environmental and economic impacts of alternative fuel and advanced vehicle technologies compared to conventional vehicles. With the A-Fleet online tool, you can calculate greenhouse gas or GHG emissions and air pollutant reductions. You can estimate fuel use, petroleum use, and cost savings. And you can compare vehicle types powered by electricity, natural gas, propane, or any other alternative fuel. You can also run scenarios for light, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles. This uses data from DOE's GREET model, and you can enter your own custom data as well. It's a very easy tool to find and navigate. We use the A-Fleet online version. There is also an offline version available that gets a little more complex. So this is the tool that the medium and heavy duty program uses to analyze the greenhouse gas emission abatement and the dollar per metric ton of carbon dioxide equivalent that will eventually help rank your projects and your applications. They have two sections that we mainly use. One is payback for on-road and one is payback for off-road. Let's get into the on-road calculator first. This is what it looks like. Over here, you can enter the type of vehicle that you would like to use for this calculation. There's light-duty vehicles, but we're mostly interested in the heavy-duty ones. So for example, let's say we have an application that plans to purchase a transit bus. It is in the state of Maryland, so we will add that information. The quantity is just used to scale these numbers. So for now, let's just assume it's 1. A very important metric that we request in our applications is the vehicle mileage or the vehicle miles traveled, VMT. This is just an estimate of how much you anticipate your vehicle to cover in a year. So let's say 10,000 miles per year. And we have the diesel option toggled as our base case scenario. And we're going to click the EV option as well, just so we can have a comparison. And this is what we're most interested in, the annual greenhouse gas emissions. It's presented in short tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. You can see here that the EV emits 16.7 tons and the diesel version emits 31.1 tons, which is almost 2 times that of the EV. As you scroll down, you can also look at annual petroleum use. The diesel equivalent uses 56.5 barrels and the EV uses, I think, 0.4 barrels. And this captures the lifetime petroleum use of these vehicles. So that was probably in the manufacturing phase of the EV. And once you scroll all the way down, you can also look at the annual air pollutants, which gives you the carbon monoxide, nitrous oxides, PM10, PM2.5, VOCs, and the SOx. So all the way on the bottom here, you can see how much the EV emits, and all the way on the other side, you can see how much a diesel equivalent would have. Another option here is you can toggle FCVs, which are gaseous hydrogen fuel cells, as the medium and heavy duty grant also covers hydrogen vehicles. You can get a visual comparison of what it's going to look like to have an FCV versus an EV versus a conventional diesel equivalent. You can look at the emissions here with the FCV, the EV, and the diesel equivalent, the annual petroleum use, and the annual air pollutants for each type of vehicle. You can toggle any other type you want as well, just to have a comparison. This tool is quite flexible. You can add in any other information you would like. You can add in the purchase price of these vehicles, the maintenance amount in dollar per miles, and the fuel economy that you expect from the vehicle. So it is quite customizable. You also have other options to customize them where you can enter your own fuel prices. These are just default values that Argonne National Lab uses. You can enter anything that you would like if you have a public or private fuel station as well. And finally, you can enter other fueling options in here. So all in all, this tool is pretty customizable. That is for on-road. Moving on, let's look at what the off-road version looks like. It looks pretty similar. You can first select your equipment type, which is all of these are small equipments. What we're interested in is the bottom half of it, which is going to be medium and heavy duty equipment. Because remember, this grant only covers vehicles that have a gross vehicle weight of greater than 10,000 pounds. So let's say I would like to get a forklift in the state of Maryland. Quantity 2. A key difference between the on-road and off-road vehicles on the A-Fleet tool is the on-road uses the vehicle miles traveled to estimate the GHG abatement, whereas the off-road version uses an annual hourly usage of these vehicles. This is just how many hours of use you anticipate from your ZEV in a year. Let's say 2,000. You can also change the rated horsepower here if you have that information available, but for now, we're just going to leave it at what the default is for forklifts. Again, you can toggle different versions, different fuel types here. Diesel is going to be our base case. We're going to hit EV. And as you saw in the on-road calculator, you can see the short tons of carbon dioxide equivalent for annual greenhouse gas emissions for an EV, 53.7 tons, and that for a diesel equivalent, which is going to be 90.7 tons. All the way down, you can look at the annual petroleum use. For diesel equivalents is going to be 165 barrels, which is quite a lot of petroleum. And for the EV equivalent is 1.1 barrels. And all the way down, you can also look at the annual air pollutants for an EV versus that for a diesel equivalent. So this is the tool that we're going to use to evaluate all of your applications. You are also welcome to put in information for the ZEVs you would like to purchase in here, in case you would just like to look at the simple payback period or get an idea of how much greenhouse gas emissions we can expect from your project. Similar to the on-road version, you can customize this however you would like. You could put in different types of EV battery info, choose the type of battery, capacity, and the cost, different fuel options, different fuel prices, all of that. That's it. Back to Natalie.
Awesome. Thank you, Pratiksha. So we wanted to show that just you all have a good glimpse of what the A-Fleet tool is. It's a very useful tool for us to use and for you to use as well as a fleet. So thank you, Pratiksha. And that is all the presentation and information we wanted to share with you today. This slide is, like I said, the QR code. You can scan and it will show you all the programs we have at MEA in terms of energy efficiency, buildings, communities, transportation, solar, renewable energy, a lot of different options out there that you could get potential funding for. So please reach out to us if you have any questions. And we will get back to you at a reasonable time. This is just kind of a one slide that we have in here as well, just to kind of do an overview of what we discussed today on the key grant features. So we really appreciate your time, and you can reach out to us at the transportation.mea@maryland.gov email box, and we will get back to you. So thank you, and this will be posted on the Medium and Heavy Duty Zero Emission Vehicle Grant Program webpage as well, as long as the presentation. So you'll be able to revisit if you have any further questions as well. So thank you so much, and have a great day.